The stories of Mahabharata, retold by Sudipta Bhaumik. Welcome, dear friends, to another episode of The Stories of Mahabharata. In the last episode, we heard how the Pandavas managed to kill Drona using a white lie from Yudhishthira. When the 15th day of the war concluded with the sun setting in the western horizon, Duryodhana returned to his chamber and called for an urgent meeting with his generals. With the fall of Drona, he knew he must now select a new commander-in-chief. And this time, he was determined not to pick anyone who sympathized with the Pandavas. Although Bhishma and Drona were the best warriors of the Kaurava side, they were old and always had special feelings for the 5 brothers. This was their greatest weakness, and that is what caused their fall. They willingly gave away their lives to make sure the Pandavas win the war. Today, Duryodhana was determined not to lose his temper and not to pick someone just because of his age and experience. He should select someone who is not only a gallant warrior, but also hates the Pandavas from the core of his heart. One by one, the generals assembled in Duryodhana's tent. Duryodhana looked at them and in a calm voice said, "My dear friends, we all know what kind of a dire situation we are in. But it is still not too late. With your help, we can and we will defeat the Pandavas. I'd request you all to speak your mind and together let's figure out a plan to win this war." Ashwatthama stood up and said, "O king, both grandfather Bhishma and my father Drona were gallant warriors and they have done their part. We should not give up, for with strong will and resolve, we can carve out our destiny. We still have many great warriors amongst us who can lead us to our victory. I suggest we appoint the great warrior and the king of Anga, our friend KARNA, as the new commander-in-chief. Nobody can match his skills with weaponry and warfare. I'm sure he is the man who can easily defeat the enemy and make us victorious." "Ashwatthama, you spoke my mind," said Duryodhana as he stood up and walked towards Karna. He looked at Karna and extended his arms towards him. "My dear friend, you are the most capable warrior amongst us who can defeat the Pandavas. I know when Arjun finds you are leading our army, he would leave the battlefield in fear and never come back. I request you to accept my offer to take over the Kaurava side as our commander-in-chief." Karna held Duryodhana's hand and said, "My friend, my king, I accept your offer. You can be rest assured, tomorrow I will destroy the Pandavas once and for all and bring you victory." Duryodhana called the priests and formally consecrated Karna as the Kaurava commander-in-chief. On the 16th day morning, Karna appeared on the Kurukshetra battlefield on his heavily armed chariot drawn by 4 powerful horses. Karna arranged the Kaurava army in the Makara or crocodile formation with his chariot at the top. The other Kuru generals covered the rest of the vantage points. Yudhishthira watched the Kaurava army and called upon Arjun. "My dear brother, most of the gallant warriors of the Kauravas are dead. Now only the inferior ones are left, except for Karna. Kill Karna and victory will be ours. Arjun created the crescent moon formation with Bhima on the left, Drishtadyumna on the right, and Yudhishthir in the center. Arjun, Nakul, and Sahadev stood behind Yudhishthir to cover him. With the sound of the conch shells ringing out across the Kurukshetra, the two armies clashed for the 16th time. The soldiers pounced upon each other like fierce animals, and soon the battlefield was littered with body parts. Bhim rode on a huge elephant and attacked Hemadhurti, king of Kumut. Hemadhurti commanded his army to surround Bhimsen from all sides. Bhim's elephant trampled and killed them like ants. Bhim hurled a huge mace at Hemadhurti and knocked him off his elephant. Ashwathama attacked Bhim from his chariot. Bhim got off the elephant and jumped into a chariot to match Ashwathama's speed. The two gallant warriors then engaged in a ferocious battle using the most fierce weapons. Warriors around stopped fighting and watched the amazing battle between the two giants and praised their gallantry. Soon both Bhim and Ashwathama were riddled with each other's arrows and fell unconscious on their respective chariots. The charioteers quickly drove them out of the battlefield to give them some time to recuperate. After a little rest, Ashwathama asked his charioteer to take him back into the battlefield. He saw Arjun fighting the Samsaktaks at a distance. He raised his voice and yelled at Arjun, "Leave those weaklings alone and fight me if you can. Let me see what you have learned from my father." Krishna turned the chariot and drove Arjun close to Ashwathama. "Ashwathama, I bring my friend Arjun to you," said Krishna. "Try to strike him hard and be prepared to be struck back equally hard. This is the time to pay back your Kuru masters to make the best use of it. Remember, Brahmins fight with words, but you have chosen to pick up arms like a Kshatriya. So let your weapons decide your fate." "So be it," said Ashwathama, and in quick succession struck both Krishna and Arjun with his arrows. Arjun laughed and rapidly shot hundreds of arrows at Ashwathama to overwhelm him. Kings and warriors from Anga, Banga and Kalinga came on their elephants to attack Arjun and help Ashwathama. But Arjun's arrows were too much for them to handle, and they soon gave up and fled the battle. Ashwathama, however, was not rattled by Arjun's incessant attack. Using the skills he had learned from his father Drona, Ashwathama struck Arjun and Krishna with some deadly weapons and forced them to retreat. Arjun was reeling from Ashwathama's attack and was struggling to stand on his feet. Krishna circled his chariot back and said, "Focus, Arjun, focus on Ashwathama. You have been taking him too lightly. Remember, he is your Guru Drona's son and he is as skilled as you are. Ashwathama is vying for revenge and you must use all your power to stop him." Arjun wiped off the blood from his face, engaged few of the fiercest weapons on his Gandiva and aimed at Ashwathama. Within moments, Ashwathama's hands, his chest, his heads and his thighs were riddled with arrows. Arjun struck Ashwathama's horses and the animals ran berserk, dragging the chariot far away from the battlefield. On another section of the battlefield, Nakul was busy decimating the Kaurava army. His sharp and deadly arrows killed thousands and the soldiers began to flee for their lives. When Karna, the commander-in-chief, heard of this news, he veered his chariot to face Nakul. Nakul welcomed Karna with a laugh and said, After a long time the gods have granted me my wish and sent you here. You are the cause of all this mess. It is because of your ill advice we cousins are now fighting each other. The war won't end until you die. And today, I'll fulfill my duty by killing you." Karna lifted his bow and said, "My dear Nakul, only fools boast more than they fight. You stop babbling and fight me with all your might. Let's see what you have got." Nakul was furious. He pulled out his deadly weapons and hurled them at Karna while circling his chariot. Karna laughed, and with a skillful use of his arrows, he intercepted all and destroyed them while in flight. Nakul kept shooting arrows at Karna, and Karna kept dodging them. And then Karna began to shoot at Nakul. The incessant flow of arrows from Karna's bow covered the sky like a dark cloud. Nakul was overwhelmed. He tried his best to deflect them, but soon lost his horses and his charioteer. Karna's arrows shattered Nakul's chariot, and Nakul fell to the ground. He grabbed his sword and stood up to defend himself. Karna shattered his sword. Nakul was scared. He began to run to save his life. Karna chased Nakul and soon caught up with him. Karna extended his arm and grabbed Nakul's neck with his bow. Nakul struggled to free himself, but Karna held him tight and said, "Now tell me, what you were saying then? You wanted to kill me, right?" Nakul couldn't speak. Karna pulled him close and said, "My boy, you picked the wrong person to show your prowess. You should only fight those who are equal to you and avoid the mighty Kaurava warriors. I can kill you now, but I won't. Go back to your tent and tend to your injuries." Karna released Nakul as remembered his promise to Kunti. Except Arjun, he won't kill any of the remaining 4 Pandava brothers. Freed from Karna's bow, Nakul tried to catch his breath while he jumped up on a chariot and left the battlefield. The Sangsaptaks continued their mission of keeping Arjun engaged in a battle with them, thus sparing the other Kaurava warriors from his arrows. Arjun kept on killing them, and they kept on attacking him in hordes. It seemed they were bent upon dying in the hands of Arjun. Susharma's brother Satyasen hurled a spear at Krishna. The spear pierced Krishna's left arm, and the reins dropped off his hand. Arjun was furious. He pulled out a fierce weapon from his chariot and with a loud cry hurled it at Satyasen. The weapon struck Satyasen and killed him instantly. He then engaged the deadly Indrastra on his Gandiv, chanted the activating mantra and released it. The weapon went high into the sky and split up into thousands of deadly arrows and dove down to strike the enemy soldiers and kill them all. On the other section of the battlefield, Duryodhan was engaged in an intense battle with Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir was at his best and demonstrated that he was no less than his brothers Bhim and Arjun. He attacked Duryodhan with such fury that the Kaurava king found it difficult to keep up. Yudhishthir's arrows killed Duryodhan's charioteer and his 4 horses, shattered his bow and his chariot mast. Duryodhan couldn't keep his balance and stumbled onto the ground. Karna, Ashwatthama, Kripa saw their king in distress and came to save him from Yudhishthir's onslaught. Watching Yudhishthir being outnumbered, the Pandava brothers surrounded Yudhishthir to protect him. A fierce battle broke out between the greatest of warriors on both sides. Duryodhan didn't give up. He jumped up on an empty chariot and pounced upon Yudhishthir and riddled him with arrows. Yudhishthir laughed and said, "Duryodhan, your arrows feel nothing more than pinpricks. Don't you have anything more powerful?" Duryodhan growled in anger and looked for more fierce weapons in the chariot. Yudhishthir took this opportunity and hit him with a volley of arrows that cut through his armor, and Duryodhan began to bleed. Duryodhan knew bows and arrows are not his forte. He picked up his favorite weapon, the mace, and jumped off the chariot. With a huge roar, he swirled his mace over his head and ran towards Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir engaged a fierce weapon that glowed like a red-hot iron and fired it at Duryodhan. The weapon shot through the air like a blazing meteor and struck Duryodhan on his chest and knocked him out. Yudhishthir pulled out his sword and jumped off the chariot to finish off his arch enemy when Bhim blocked him on his chariot. "Stop! Don't slay Duryodhan. He is not for you to kill. I have promised to kill Duryodhana, and I will do so when the time comes. Till then, you must leave him alone and help me keep my promise." Yudhishthir remembered the ill-fated day of the game of dice, when a furious Bhim vowed to crush Duryodhana's thigh and kill him. He looked at Bhim and said, "Thank you for reminding me. I'll leave Duryodhana for you." Yudhishthir stepped back into his chariot and drove away. As the sun began to dip behind the western horizon, the conch shells rang out announcing the end of the 16th day of the battle, and the exhausted soldiers dropped their weapons and lay down on the ground in relief.
The Stories of Mahabharata is written, directed and told by Sudipta Bhawmik. Audio engineering, original music and sound design by Avi Ziv. Find us online at facebook.com/Mahabharata podcast. Join the group for updates and news. Subscribe to the podcast using iTunes or any other podcast catcher. On Twitter, we are at Mahabharat Audio.